Who's that for though? Is that for the kids?
Everything that we talk about, everything we do, everything a child needs to learn about life and about sports is going to come through what they hear.
It's all about finding that right, academic, athletic mix.
Everything is a learning experience.
I tell parents, listen, I want you here. What's going on, man? We back at Table Talk. How you feeling today?
Doing great, man. How you doing?
You know how it is, man. I'm tired, but I stay energized at the same time. I don't know how I do it, but I do it. It's the bald head and the gray hair, but we keep it rocking.
Most definitely. Got to, man.
Yeah. What you want to talk about today, man? Let's get these people
man,
something.
a topic that struck my mind, man. I was in a training session yesterday.
Yeah.
And, I observe every player that walks through the gym, from the body language, everything. Man, I want to talk about today about football players, how football players actually think that they're in shape, but they quickly realize that they're not in the shape that they thought they were in.
Okay, we're gonna step on some toes today. I'm feeling that. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So what you mean they ain't in shape though? They playing football.
Well, no, let's analyze it though. Think about this. The average football play lasts between 2 and 8 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
Short run, then maybe a long run. Okay. A high school team, college team, or NFL team is going to run between 35 and maybe 50, maybe 60 plays in a game, right?
Okay.
So let's just say that a team is going to run 100 plays, which is not going to happen. No college, NFL, or high school team is going to run 100 plays. But let's say they run 100 plays.
Time out. Didn't our Tigers hit that number though? Or they hit like 80, 90? Our Tigers do something like that now.
Yeah, but watch this. They may have hit 80, they may have hit 90, but they didn't hit 100. But watch this. Let's say they run 100 plays at a maximum of 8 seconds every play.
I'm feeling you. Got the mathematics.
Not going to happen. Not going to happen. So that's 100 plays, 8 seconds every play. That's 800 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
If you divide 800 by 60, there's 60 seconds in a minute. If you divide 800 by 60, you get 13.333.
Yep.
Which means for a full football game, high school, college, or NFL, if a team run 100 plays, 8 seconds every play, which is not going to happen, that means for a 2 or 3 hour football game, a player is only moving nonstop for 13 minutes. But those numbers cut in half because the plays cut in half, 50, 60, 70 plays. The time cut in half is not 8 seconds every play. So for a full 2 or 3 hour football game, a team is only moving nonstop for 4 to 6 minutes. So my question is, I'm a numbers guy. I'm always analyzing stuff, so I'm a numbers guy.
Yep.
So for a 2 or 3 hour football game, a player is only moving nonstop between 4 and 6 minutes. So my question is, why is football players needing oxygen, cramping up, fatiguing out, can't even go through a series of plays for 4 minutes? So that brings me to my question. Why do football players think they're in shape? Why is that? They're only moving nonstop for a 2 or 3 hour football game between 4 and 6 minutes.
Okay, so the thing about the football player, right? You got to factor in that collision, right? You got to factor that collision into it, right? Because that impacts your endurance, right?
Thought about that.
Okay, so I mean, I don't know, because you hit me with this one. I mean,
all right, so let's take this.
Let me hold time about because you know what I'm thinking. I'm thinking, man, I didn't pay this money for a game, all this thing. For what? I'm watching 5 minutes of football.
That's it. If you think about the numbers, you're only watching football between 4 and 6 minutes. So I've already thought about all of this. My mind is always churning. So you said you got to factor in collision, right? So let's think about football players when they train. If you're going to be a football player, you got to train like you're a sumo wrestler, right?
Yep.
Because you got to play tug of war with body weight, right? But this is the problem. A lot of football players lift weights, but they build the outer layer of the muscle. So if you think about a skillet of cornbread, if you cook a skillet of cornbread on high,
That
That
cornbread.
bread is going to brown on the outside, but it's still going to be what? Doughy in the middle, right?
Mm.
So this is what happens to football players when they start working out and start lifting weights. They're only building the outer layer of the muscle. They're not building the interior fibers of that muscle, which means they don't have the stamina, they don't have the endurance to last for a long period of time. This is the hidden factor to training that a lot of people miss. You can lift weights all day long, but if you give me a ping pong player that has the stamina, that has the endurance in their muscles, something that the football player is missing or lacking, that ping pong player is going to outlast that football player, which means that ping pong player is going to expose that football player once fatigue become a factor. Think about it.
Ooh. They giving out scholarships for ping pong, man.
Say what now?
Say they giving out them scholarships for ping pong. Nah, don't sleep though. That high level ping pong ain't no joke. I was watching the match the other day. I was like, man, them jokers is crazy. I watched that all day long, man.
Man, the quick twitch muscles.
Oh, you know, I'm talking about the badminton. I'm talking about the badminton too. It's a badminton and the ping pong.
Yeah, both of them.
Getting it.
Quick twitch muscles, hand-eye coordination. You got to have all that.
All that. But hold up though. So let's talk about. So are we talking about position specific? We're not talking about football in general, because my visuals take me to the lineman. You know, no disrespect, but my visuals takes me to the lineman. But when I think about the DBs and the wideouts, I wouldn't think that.
About being out of shape?
About especially like the cornbread, like as far as cornbread. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's with any athlete. That's with any athlete. Any athlete that lift weights, you're going to build the outer layer of that muscle.
I'm feeling
that's the kinesiology part of strength training. You build the outer layer of the muscle. You don't get on the interior fibers of that muscle. So now let's think about what therapists do when you're rehabbing that muscle. Okay.
Right.
When you have an injured body part, you go to therapy. What's the first thing they grab? Resistance bands.
Yeah, they get the bands all day.
So the resistance bands are therapeutic. Why is the resistance bands therapeutic? Let me tell you why. Because you actually build the muscle, because you're rebuilding that muscle. You build the muscle from the bone or from the tendon out, which means you building the stamina, you building the endurance, you building the muscle the right way, because you're now building the muscle from the bone or from the tendon out, which means you're building the muscle correctly, which means you're going to increase the chances to be injury free because you're building the muscle the right way. So when you start to build the muscle the right way, now let's talk about stabilization muscle work. Stabilization muscle work at every breaking point in the body. Your ankle, your elbow, your shoulder, your hips, your knees, your ankles. At every breaking point in your body, you got stabilization muscles. The only way to build stabilization muscle work is to build muscle from the bone or from the tendon out. These are muscles that's often forgotten. So when you talk about players having injury in football, when they get fatigued and that muscles start to kind of break down a little bit, what do you think is going to happen to those tendons?
Oh, that's
basketball players.
Yeah.
Basketball players, when their muscle get fatigued and they have not built stabilization muscles, what do you think is going to happen to that tendon?
Yep, we're getting weak.
So you can lift weights all day long.
Yep.
But if you don't have the stamina, the endurance, and you don't build a quick twitch muscle along with stabilization muscle work, you're setting yourself up for injury.
And see, what's interesting now, I'm recalling you and I had this conversation a while back, because when you hit me with the cornbread, I'm like, bro, I don't cook skillet cornbread, so I didn't know what you were talking about. You know what I mean? But when you explained it, and it makes all the sense in the world, because we talk about training all the time, you and I, and I in a lot of rehab stuff that I've gone through, PT stuff, I use in my training when I'm training kids, the bands and all that. And I knew there was a reason why I was doing it, just because from experience. But when you break it down like that, it's totally enlightening, right? And so now it takes me to, because once you get to the college program, typically your strength and conditioning coaches, they handle all that, they manage all that, right? So now we're talking about our audience, right? Those kids that aren't at that level yet, you know what I mean? All over the world. They're not doing this for the most part. They can't be, because to your point, everybody's throwing up weight, because that's the first thing we always think about. Let's throw that weight up, let's get that weight popping. Let's build our muscles. Great, you have to, but you also got to get underneath that, right? And it's like making your bed. You throw the spread on top, but the wrinkle, your sheets is wrinkled. It don't look right, right?
Right.
It's not comfortable. You know what I mean? So you got so these guys, you're giving them food right now. That's good stuff right there, man. It's amazing
Man.
analogy. I love it. I love it. So cornbread, I'm hungry. I ain't ate lunch yet. So I'm feeling everything about that, man. That's just good stuff. But I'm
Man,
still
when
bugging because you're talking about what is that? It's a 60-minute game, right? On the clock. And your participation level on that, man. I mean, your longest play is what, kickoff returns? That's the
that's
longest.
what, 8 seconds.
That's 8 seconds.
8 seconds.
So that's yeah. But you got to prepare for that 8 seconds. I get that. You know, you definitely got to prepare for that 8 seconds. But like you said, though, when you look at the grand scheme of it, and then you get somebody coming in trying, like you take a high school kid who just finished playing football. Now he trying to transition to basketball season. That's why you see them jokers. It takes him some time to get acclimated to that basketball because it's a little different type of being in shape. When you talk about hooping. Nah, that's good stuff, man. That's ooh. I hope y'all listening out there. Y'all better pay attention. If you ain't got a band, you better get one today. Hands down. Get you a band. Man, listen. Any kind of band. Just something that's going to work inside, underneath. Make that bed. That's good stuff,
Yes,
right?
yes,
Love it.
yes.
Love it. Man, you
I'm
hit
telling
me.
you,
I wasn't ready for that. See, this is why I
That's
like
the-
table talk, man. We throwing ideas, stuff out there, and somebody start talking. Man, you stumped me on that one. I'm a little upset. So I got to come
I'm
back.
telling you, because listen, I see football players walk into my session, man, to do some of my strength training classes,
Yeah.
which is called CASE training, which is core agility, strength, and endurance training.
Time out.
And they walk in.
Time out. Say it again. Case training. Let them know.
My CASE training class is core agility, strength, endurance training. It's called CASE training. Man, I have football players walk in, you know, they all strong and everything. They walk in within the first 10 to 15 minutes. They broke.
Just tapping out.
They cannot continue the class. And then they're looking around at everybody else and they're looking at me trying to figure out why it is they can't continue. They lift weights, they throwing up 350, 400 pounds on the bench press, might be leg sledding 1,000 pounds, but they can't keep up with some of the younger kids that's been doing this for a minute. They can't keep up.
Yeah.
Cannot keep up. That's because you build the outer layer of that muscle. You don't build stamina, you don't build endurance. Once fatigue become a factor, trust me, you're gonna tap out real quick. All that muscle, all that power does not matter once fatigue set in.
So you gotta be well.
The statement that I always give a lot of people is this: you can't train yourself mentally until you've been tested physically.
Okay.
And you will never develop physically until you've been tested mentally. So in other words, when these athletes come into my training session, as soon as they tap out, can't continue, don't want to stop, I stress to them, if you don't find the will to tell yourself to keep going now, you will not develop mentally. If you don't develop mentally, how will you ever get in the shape you need to get in physically? Because you can't tell yourself to keep going. That's the only way you get in better shape, man. You gotta be ready here. When you're faced with something, you gotta tell yourself, I gotta keep going, I gotta keep going. It ain't gonna last. I gotta keep going, I gotta keep going. If you can't do that, you'll never get in the shape you need to be in. Never, because you're gonna always tap out real quick.
And listen, I love what you just said because you know that's about seeing success, little successes, and that's a little success, and you do that each time, that builds up the big success. That's a beautiful thing. That's a beautiful thing.
Most definitely.
You out here preaching, man. Listen, we in chapter 3 from the book of Rayfield. I'm loving it. We'll be back on Table Talk. Christian Lockhart.
Rayfield Ragland.